Hello and welcome to the Smells Like Infinite Sadness podcast. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I run the website, smellslikeinfinitesadness.com. It's a blog covering the best alternative rock from the 80s and 90s up to present day. I'm a proud middle-aged Gen Xer who is still obsessed with the music of his youth and loves to talk about it. Now today I'll be speaking with Marty Willson-Piper. He is of course best known as the guitarist for The Church, the Australian psychedelic rock institution who he played with for over 20 years, but he's also had a rich body of work outside the band. He's had a solo career for many, many years, and since leaving the band he's worked with a ton of other acts. He's been especially busy as of late, recently releasing his new album entitled The Afterlife for Noctorum, a musical duo featuring Piper and his collaborator Dare Mason, which came out in February under School Kid Records. Marty also has a special surprise for fans, just in time for Record Store Day 2019. He'll be re-releasing his solo album for 2000 entitled Hanging Out in Heaven. It'll be on a blue-tinged double record set with new artwork and 2 extra tracks, which is also coming out via School Kid Records. Now, I had a chance to interview Marty regarding all of his recent activity, as well as even more material that he has in the works, so sit back and enjoy the interview, followed by tracks of Hanging Out in Heaven and The Afterlife. All right. Well, I guess my first question is, tell me about your recent European tour, how that went, and how did that all go about?
All the dates were really great. There was a lot. I describe it by saying there was a lot of love in the room, and it's really great to be able to perform in that surrounding. A lot of attentive people who were interested in, liked what we do, liked the sound of what we do. You know, me playing songs I wrote or generally co-wrote, singing them, 12-string guitar, Olivia playing violin, some harmonies, some, stories, and people were really receptive to it, and it was a lot of fun. Met a lot of great people, and it was really encouraging to perform these days to people that wanted to listen. You know, there's been a lot of things I've read on the net about what is it with people that go to shows and don't want to listen. Mm-hmm. They go there and talk all the way through it, and they're not actually there for what's happening. It's like, going to the movies and somebody gets their phone out. It's like, really?
Yeah. It is a real problem. I've noticed a lot of shows too. You're like, why did you pay money? Why did you want to come if you're going to be in your phone the whole time or talk? It's strange.
Yeah.
Well, I unfortunately I missed you the last time you were in Austin. I didn't realize you were in town till after you were gone.
Yeah.
But I was kind of curious, between the last time I saw you and this recent trip, you kind of switched things up as far as the set list was concerned. Were you still kind of being very improvisational each night? Like,
yeah, well, we have some kind of standard songs that we play, and we sort of try and pick some new ones each time. I think what Olivia and I need to do, though, is we need to make a record of us, how we sound, because what we do is we go out there as the duo of the two of us, and we sound this way, and then somebody comes up and says, so I see you've got lots of CDs and vinyl for sale. Which one is the one that most typifies what I heard tonight? Because I really enjoyed tonight. And I go, actually none of them. So we need to sort of have a version of our live selves for sale at the shows so that people can actually buy what they hear. I mean, obviously you can buy my solo records or Noctorum records or MOAT records or, projects that I've been involved in, but none of them really sound the way that we sound. And people sort of seem to like the way that we sound as we are. So it would be great to, it would be really great to make a record of either recorded versions of our set or perhaps new material, or perhaps a mixture of both. And the thing is, if we using this, the thing is, the violin has really put a new slant on my songwriting and what I do. So I have a big history of co-writing or writing songs and making records. So we could be interpreting all that material as Olivia and I for years to come, you know. So it might be nice to maybe mix some of the older songs with some new songs and just make a whole lot of records for the next 10 years or however long I survive the planet Earth.
Well, I've also been really enjoying the new Noctorum album, The Afterlife. I've thought that's a really great, solid recording. I've enjoyed all the songs off of it. I was curious, have you enjoyed the response to it so far, and how is it making that album?
Well, it's really been well received. It hit the bottom of some of the American charts, which was kind of interesting. But it also, more importantly, people who like me like it, and enthusiastic reviews and feedback. And you know, it's a funny thing though, isn't it? Because I don't know if this is a better record than the 3 albums we made before this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is Noctorum. The Afterlife is Noctorum 4. It's great that people have enthused so much about it. But Noctorum 3 didn't really get to anybody for some reason. I mean, by definition, Noctorum records are kind of eclectic. So when I say Noctorum 3 wasn't really that different to Noctorum 4, that's kind of a bit of a contradiction because they're eclectic anyway. But Honey Mink Forever, the third Noctorum album, didn't really get to anybody. But, you know, it didn't really get promoted. It didn't really get pushed. There wasn't really any gigs or anybody sort of really properly behind it. So I just like to think that people might be interested in the previous records because of this one. That's what happens to me when I discover a band and I go, "Oh my God, this is their 18th album, and I've never got into them before." I start going back. I mean, when I bought, I guess the first Bowie album I bought was probably Ziggy Stardust. You know, so what did I do? I didn't wait for the next album. I went and bought Hunky Dory. I mean, isn't that the obvious thing to do?
Kind of trace it back to its source.
Yeah, despite Hunky Dory being a quite different record to Ziggy Stardust, I was very pleasantly surprised. Hunky Dory is such a great album, you know, but it didn't have the appeal that Ziggy Stardust did. And because Ziggy Stardust was so popular, Hunky Dory went back into the charts, even though it didn't perform anywhere near as Ziggy Stardust when it came out. So the quality of the record, obviously, is nothing to do with the quality of the record.
It's just some people get to hear it, and
yeah, that's just how it works. It seems, you know, and it's like I think you can probably say truthfully that for most people, they'd really like this if they'd got to hear it.
Well, do you think that doing the whole crowdfunding thing is kind of a nice way to involve the fans and they get more appreciation out of an album that way? They're more intimately involved as far as...
well, I think that, well, you know, we had a problem with the crowdfunding thing. We raised an amount for the Afterlife, and then Pledge Music didn't pay us.
Seriously?
So, yeah. Oh, yeah. They still owe us at least half. I don't know exactly how much it is, but we actually managed to make the record, master it, do the cover art, send it all out. We honored all the pledges, but they didn't pay us all the money that we had pledged to us. It's a massive problem. There's a whole lot of bands who didn't get paid. We're waiting to find out what's going to happen in April. But to answer your question about the intimate relationship between people who make the records and people that enjoy them, I've always liked it that way. I was never very much for differentiating between us, us and the us and them thing. There's them, the audience, and me, the star. It's just like this whole thing about meet and greets where people pay to meet you. I think it's just wrong. You don't have to pay me to meet me. You don't have to pay me to give you an autograph. A record by me that's autographed doesn't cost more than one that isn't. I just don't get it. That's not intimacy to me. That's taking advantage of enthusiastic fans, the very people who are supporting you. It's just taking advantage of them, and I just think it's just wrong.
Well, going back to the pledge music, that's a common issue now with them not paying artists. Has that really been kind of an epidemic? Because that's.
Well, I'm surprised you haven't even heard about this. This has been a real big news. It's been a real. You should go on the net and have a look at it after we've spoken.
I will,
because it's a whole thing. A whole lot of bands suddenly found they weren't getting paid, and then they suspended their business and told everybody to wait till April when we would come back to us and let us know where we stand. But at this point, we still have no information.
Is it when you look at being in a back in the career in the 80s and the 90s when there was actually a strong record label support, and now it's more into the the internet and kind of finding your own different route. Is it extremely difficult to operate in those waters, or do you find it? There's pros and cons to each versus what you do now versus the days of where labels gave more support, or how do you?
Yeah, you see, the thing is, the pros. Let me answer this way. The labels gave support to some people, not to everybody, and some people couldn't get arrested even if they were good because, I don't know, they didn't have a perceived hit, or they weren't good looking enough, or they weren't young enough, or they didn't have the right integrity, or weren't controversial enough, or whatever it was. So it's leveled the playing field, really, and somebody might be able to get a lot further now than they ever could because the major labels would never support them. So, we were lucky. I was lucky to be part of a band that did get noticed and did have a couple of hits, and therefore was able to get to people. But it's like on this latest Noctorum record. I've got a label that likes me and a label owner that likes me. He's hired a publicist that likes me, who gets interviews, and I get to talk to people, and she promotes it all the time. So, that's what you want, is just being able to get to people, being able to say what you think about things, and for getting them to hear your music. And hopefully between what you say and what you do and what you sound like, you can grow an audience that can support you through your creativity or your future as a musician,
Well, going back to the new album, I really liked the opening song, The Moon Drips. It had such a kind of spaghetti Western kind of atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
Did you write it with that in mind? Did you have the idea of the horns in mind when you were beginning that way, or did it just kind of evolve into that?
No, it just had that beat, that dun 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 dun, it just had that thing, and it just really really asked for the Mexican trumpet. But the first part of the song is violin, so it's fascinating clash of cultures, really, because it's kind of like Transylvania meets the Texas borders and the Mexican bandidos, So it's interesting that it stands one leg in Europe and one leg in one leg in Europe. Sorry, there's a phone ringing there. One leg in Europe and one leg in America, on the border between Texas and Mexico. And although it's got that Tex-Mex thing going on, it also, it's more kind of European 19th century creatures of the night. So you would never usually put those two things together, but somehow those two ideas, those two, they're quite opposite concepts, but they somehow work together as one thing, and it just, there's nothing weird about it at all.
Well, that's great. I love how it kind of flows, and it's such a good atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
When you work with Darren Mason, who I know he's also produced it, I mean, how does the songwriting process work? Do you come in with the main song ideas and he kind of just adds different sonic elements, or do you collaborate together? How does that work?
Yeah, we just collaborate together. We pick up a guitar and a bass or a couple of guitars, and we just start playing around. And as soon as somebody comes up with something that sounds like it's going to be good, Dare might say, "Should we put it to a loop, should we just put this chord sequence down and play around that chord sequence and see if we can come up with another part?" And then that loop might turn into a drummer later on in the process. But it's generally just somebody picking up a guitar and sitting here, because we're actually in the VIP Lounge studio right now where we made that record. And whoever comes up with a good idea, we start thinking about putting it down. It sort of starts as a demo, and then we start refining it until it turns into a finished song. But it sort of starts as a rough idea on the same piece of tape,
What I like about the album is how it kind of goes from these very kind of epic things like that, or the title track, but then you have the closing track, which I want to get a field with sheep. Do I have the title right?
In a field full of sheep.
In a field full of sheep, which I love the kind of just lackadaisical lyrics where you're just kind of describing like a day in the life of you all making the record. Was that kind of improvisational when those lyrics came out, or how did
it was at first? Yeah. We sort of, I don't know, Darren and I have a certain aspect of ourselves which we call English whimsy, and that's what that song is. And I don't know, I guess we came up with some of the again, we would start with the music, and then I just went in the studio and just started jamming words over it, and I just went in there and went, "Olivia sewed up her skirt again. And by the time the morning came, it had broken." And then I just carried on, just inventing all these people around me that were involved, or friends, or Julian, who lived around the corner and is a removal man, and my mate Hud, and mine and Dare's mate Hud, and Boydie, and Martin, who's his flatmate, and we just kind of started incorporating them into this song. So I started writing this kind of whimsical song about the people around whilst we were making the record, and how our life is influenced by our friends. And the idea was in a field full of sheep. It was kind of like a dream,
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of having this bizarre dream with all these characters in it that I knew. It ends with I awoke with a start in a field full of sheep, and so it's almost like, it's kind of a contradiction. I awoke with a start in a field full of sheep. The sheep was supposed to signify the dream, but I was awaking into the dream. So it's kind of a bit surreal and a bit down to earth. It was like a mixture. Again, I really like incorporating these ideas of opposites into one thing. It's surreal and down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, I find that kind of interesting.
Well, I hear that a lot throughout the album. So you got like A Girl With No Love, which kind of got more of a kind of a garage, your rock kind of feel to it. Have you given any thought to taking this album on the road, doing a Noctorum tour, or is it more just kind of lives in the studio? And
Dare's not that into it as a road project. he's not a guy that goes out on the road and plays. He doesn't sort of. He's just brilliant in the studio, but he's not that interested in going out on the road. And I mean, I could go out on the road with it, just Olivia and I, and it's not like the drummer Ed, our friend Hannah, who plays bass with us in America, she could play bass. We could find a couple of other people, but it just sort of gets expensive, because you can't sort of just make a record like that and then afford to take it out on the road.
Yeah, with all the different production elements you have on it.
Yeah, you need 6 or 7 people, and that means a bus, and that means accommodation, and it's just too hard. I mean, we sort of make a project in the studio, and you just have to live with the fact that it's a studio project. Doesn't mean to say I won't play songs from the album live at some point when I have the potential to add some people to Olivia and I's little act, maybe, with a couple of others. I mean, we do tour in America sometimes with our friends Don and Hannah, and that means that maybe, we could do a couple of songs off the Noctorum album, like we do a couple of songs off other Noctorum albums, and we do interpretations. So, you sort of, that's what you have to do these days. You either got a 9-piece band or you're doing interpretations.
Well, I was also excited to see that you're releasing Hanging Out in Heaven's going to get a vinyl release, which I always love that album. So was that kind of always in your mind to get a record day release for it? Did someone else approach you with it? How did that come about?
Well, I've always imagined Hanging Out in Heaven as a vinyl record. It was never intended to be just a CD version. It was supposed to be vinyl as well, and it's taken 19 years to get it onto vinyl. It's double vinyl. It's got 2 extra tracks because it was always going to have a couple of extra tracks which never made the CD. It's got different artwork because the CD artwork was a rush job and never really thought about, despite Anthony Collins kindly supplying us with that photo, which we used for the original record. We've got a whole new artwork. A friend of mine, Jan Udenfeld in Stockholm. He and I went on a trip sometime in the 80s, and he took pictures of me when I was a young man doing crazy things with my camera, and we used his photos for this cover because it just seemed, I don't know, it just seemed a funny thing to do. I think I saw, was it like Brian Ferry's last album where he had a picture of himself on the cover as a younger person?
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting idea, saying, well, here's a picture of me when I was young. Does it have to be, I made this record now, do I have to have a picture of me now? Really? Who wrote that rule? And also the lyrics were so small. It was just a one open CD, and you could just, you couldn't read the lyrics. So now it's got big lyrics and, and all kinds of gatefolds. It's on blue vinyl. It's great. It's a really great thing.
What are your favorite memories from making that album when you think back to it?
Oh, gosh. Well, that was a difficult album. That's the only solo album or Noctorum album I've made without Dare. And consequently, it was kind of a tricky record to make because I was getting involved with somebody who didn't really know me as didn't know how to work with me as a solo artist. It was engineered by Shep Lonsdale, who was the engineer on the Starfish record. And he had a studio in his house, and we got along, and we suggested that I came around. I had some songs. We started recording them, and we started doing things that we wouldn't normally do. And, and I actually, in the end, although he came up with some good ideas, there's some songs that I liked with some different kind of ideas that I liked, and some ideas that I didn't like, and not a complete record. And somebody got in touch with me. It was Robert Rankin Walker from Heyday Records, and said, "Hey, you've got an album in the can." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe." And he said, well, let me hear it. I'm interested. And I sent him 5 of the tracks and said, well, this is what I got, but I really need to get in the studio again, get another 5 songs down and remix some things and, sort it out. And he's got back in touch with me and said he was interested and liked it a lot and would like to get involved. So I went in the studio in Sweden then, and I was working with a guy called Andreas Arlenius, who I'd worked together with on the After Everything Now This album.
Oh, that's a great album.
Yeah, and I think, am I telling the truth there? Is that the album with him on? Or did we do that in his studio? Maybe we just did that in his studio. And Box of Birds, we did that in his studio as well, I think. But anyway, we'd been around. I'd worked with him on, that's right, I'd worked with him on another project, which I produced. And he'd been the engineer, and I produced it. And then I'd worked with him in his studio. And then I think I'd suggested to the band that we should go to his studio to record, and I think we just used his studio. But anyway, he was around. I'd worked with him before, so I went in the studio with him and finished off these songs. I recorded "Forget the Radio" and "All That Remains," and I don't know, 3 more tracks with him in that studio, and then presented these extra 5 songs to Robert at Heyday Records, and he said, "Great." We put them together, got a sequence together, but for some reason I don't actually remember why it ended up being just such a basic cover art. I can't remember why we had no time to sort of think about the cover and get exactly what we wanted, and why the lyrics were so small. Maybe it was just because we didn't know what to do with CDs or something. Maybe we were still suffering from CDs. How do we, it was kind of probably before big booklets, CDs kind of evolved, didn't they? They started off as like really basic things, and the record companies were so slack with the they'd re-release The Doors' LA Woman, and it'd just be one piece of paper, boom, and then suddenly somebody clicked that, wait a minute, why don't we have some sleeve notes and some old photos, and why don't we remaster it, and why don't we make this the CD itself look great instead of it just being silver, The Doors, LA Woman, and so it was kind of probably before that was happening, or at least it only just started. So not a lot of thought went into the actual presentation of the record. But having said that, it was well received,
Well, I remember that I saw you at the Cactus Cafe way back when, and that's actually the first time that I saw you solo, and the first time that I actually heard something that album. I remember my friend and I bought the CD after the show, so that's always been. I always really liked that song, You Bring Your Love to Me. I think it's probably one of the best songs you've ever done. I think it's such a great song. I just like the atmosphere of it, and I just thought that was particularly...
It's funny you should say that. I just met a friend a friend of a friend came to see us in Liverpool, and he didn't know anything about me, and he said, "What's that song you did third?" And I went, "The song we did third." And I thought about it, and I was like, "Oh, you mean You Bring Your Love to Me?" Oh God! And he was Scottish. He said, "Oh yeah, Craig, I thought it was a great song. I never heard that before. It was great, mate." And so that song just seemed to talk to people. I always say that's me being Pink Floyd by myself.
It definitely has a really good atmosphere, but I was also kind of surprised the last time that I saw you in Austin, where you talked about that After 8 song.
Oh, yeah.
And you had mentioned that it was about suicide, which I just never took from the lyrics, but I thought it was one of those classic examples of like a kind of a uplifting melody, but with kind of dark lyrics. Do you remember?
Well, see it again. Again, it's like the contradiction thing. I wanted to write a sort of a happy song about suicide. I thought people that committed suicide needed a sort of more of a joyous soundtrack than rather than a depressing one. But the lyrics, you told me you're coming after 5 if I'm alive. After 5, I told you it'd be better after 8 when it's too late. After 8, and if you hear a floorboard creak, be sure that it's not me. My feet won't reach the carpet. Now the world has set me free. If you want to be here in good time, get off the line, drink your wine. If you don't think you'll make it, it's okay. Gone tomorrow, here today. And if silence is what shocks you, it's just a different kind of noise. It's good for you, but it's bad for you, but it's good for me. I didn't have much choice. It's obviously a suicide song, but obviously done in a sort of, again, in a kind of a whimsical way.
I mean, do you remember what inspired that? I mean, hopefully nothing too. It's just how that came about, because it's a very interesting approach to something like that.
After 8 is a mint. Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah, the little chocolate mints that you get.
A chocolate mint, yeah. Which my parents used to bring out every now and again, and it was like luxury. They've brought out the after 8s. Oh my God. And you'd eat one, and you'd go, that's so great. And then you'd eat 5, and you'd feel sick. So maybe there's some kind of bizarre connection between the luxurious chocolate and the pain that it's ultimately going to cause.
Well, have you given any thought to performing any material from that album, this year in honor of the record store release? Have you been performing stuff off of it on your recent tour?
Well, we did play After 8 once or twice on the tour. We played You Bring Your Love to Me 3 or 4 times on the tour. We played Forget the Radio once or twice on the tour, and maybe 1 or 2 others. So yeah, we were sort of recognizing that record was coming out, and so we did a couple of tracks from it. But I don't know. I mean, what are you talking about? What, doing see Marty Willson-Piper play the whole of Hanging Out in Heaven? You mean something like that?
I wasn't sure. I just know since it was getting a kind of a nice re-release, if you had given kind of a thought to giving a showcase to that, I suppose. Yeah,
well, we'd have to learn a whole lot more songs, but I mean, I guess that's possible. Again, it's about which songs you can interpret and which songs don't want to be interpreted in a new way. Some songs might have keyboards on it. We don't have keyboards live. I mean, it doesn't mean there's not a million keyboard players out there that could play tracks from that record. As the lead singer, I can't look after all the guitar parts.
Mm-hmm.
So I need another guitar player. Sometimes I can play, the electric guitar parts, I suppose, but generally I'd have to play the acoustic guitar parts, which means I need an electric guitar player who can play all the parts the way that I want them to be played, sure, with input from the player himself, but, there's certain things you want a certain way. That's why Jimmy Page never had another guitarist in Led Zeppelin. Can you imagine? He was trying to play all those Led Zeppelin. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but still, all those Led Zeppelin records, there's the riffs and there's the solos over the riffs. So why didn't he have another guitarist? Because he couldn't trust another guitarist to do what he did in his parts on the albums. That's the theory I came up with. They couldn't do what he did the way that he did it, so I'll just look after all the solos myself, and the band will support me, and the singer will come in and we'll get back to the riff and it'll be fine. But you hear some of those Led Zeppelin bootlegs and they're pretty dodgy, actually. They're sort of great in sometimes, but there's some dodgy, awkward moments there where he's not really nailing it, But it's not like I don't. Having said that, it's not like I thought, oh, can I trust anybody to play the songs the way I want them to be played. It's more about, as I said before, it's more about at my level getting a sort of a proper band on the road. It's just a pricey exercise, and I don't really know how to do that until there's 500 people coming to every gig, and we're sort of not at that stage. We're at the stage where we play small, intimate folk clubs and little shows with an acoustic setting with violin and acoustic guitar. Sometimes a couple of friends join us, and we do our best to interpret the songs in a way that people want to hear. But sure, I mean, I'm known as a guitar player. I mean, I would love to be able to go on stage and play riffs and lead solos and parts and have a big band and be the lead singer. I'd love to be able to do that, but there's practicalities involved which don't make it that easy.
Well, you had mentioned possibly doing an album with Olivia that's based on the way you'll perform on stage. And I know you've always got plenty of projects in the works. Is there anything else that you're currently working on? Any new albums or any other things that you're at the moment? Or?
I'm in the studio. As I said, I'm actually in the VIP lounge in Deep Music Archive. This is where we work. I'm actually working on a record. Olivia and I both are working on a record called Atlantium. The name of the band is Atlantium. It's a Steve and Lynn Knott. That's KNOTT. And it's like an instrumental project. And Steve writes all these sort of acoustic-y backings, and he gets Lynn, who plays the electric cello, to play some lines, and then he gets Olivia in here, and he suggests some lines to her, and then Olivia does a bit of overdubbing herself to get a bit of a string section going, and then he sort of says to me, "Well, can you play guitar over this instrumental section? See what you come up with." And sometimes he says, "I've got a bit of a melody line I'd like you to play." Other times he says, "You just play and do what you think, and then I will pick out some line that I like." And Dare's involved in that as well. Says, "Oh, that's a good melody. Maybe you could do that again. That could be a theme." Or I say, "I've listened to this and I had an idea for a melody that just came into my head. What do you think of this?" And they say, "Oh yeah, cool idea. See if you can work that out, and we'll work on that, and that will be the sort of lead part of the song." We're 4 or 5 songs in, and I guess there's 3 or 4 more songs to record with that kind of thinking. Yeah, and that's the project we're working on right now. And then May, there's the new MOAT album, Poison Stream, it's called, appropriate title for these days. And that's half completed, and we're hopefully going to continue with that. There's loads going on, man. What can I tell you? We're hopefully going to France to do a little bit of work with Arno on the Sweet Gumtree album project that he has. I played bass in his band on a tour a few years ago, so I was playing bass in a French band. That seemed like a cool idea at the time, so he wants me to go over there and do a little bit of playing with him. And then Olivia and I are doing some gigs in Germany. We're playing the Dusseldorf Acoustic Festival in September, some other gigs in the west of Germany in July, and I'm sure you're aware that Olivia hosts Germany and Europe's largest progressive rock festival, Night of the Prog, in Lorelei in July. Get in her way, and hopefully seeing Steve Hillage on the Sunday night, and Nick Mason's A Saucer Full of Secrets on the Saturday night.
Oh wow!
Tangerine Dream and IQ on the Friday night, and Anathema are playing as well, the Liverpool band, and a few other groups. So we'll be doing that. I hope to be back in Texas. I've got Salim Nourallah's album that I produced last year in Texas, in Dallas, and there has been talk of us going back there to perhaps finish off a couple of songs which I didn't get to play on. There's also been talk of him sending those tracks over here for me to finish them here in case we don't get back to Texas. But if we do get back to Texas, we're thinking that we might be able to record in his studio this project that Olivia and I would like to do, whether it be mixture of old and new songs or whatever it is, just trying to get a version of ourselves out there recorded.
So, I mean, do you feel if you have like too much downtime, do you get kind of antsy? I mean, is it really important for you to be constantly, working on something, pretty much filling up most of your time doing music? Is that just...
Yeah, there is no downtime. There's absolutely no downtime. I've got the Indie Music Archive, which is a project which will go on forever, collecting records, trying to find a way to get them into a building so that people can enjoy them too. That's a dream for the future, owning a building where I could have a 60s room and a 70s room and an 80s room and a 90s room with all the records and all my guitars and books and a little cafe and a little stage and a room full of record players and events and talks and a rock and roll crash upstairs and yoga and in the B room, So that's a whole thing that could take up the whole of my life if I never did anything else, Plus, I do this songwriting and guitar guidance sessions, which I have people get in touch with me and I help them with their work, trying to help them get to another level with their creativity, whether it's songwriting or playing guitar, so that keeps me busy all the time as well. I like writing about music. I do, the Indie Music Archive website's I've written over 1 million words about music, constantly finding old records that I've never heard of that I love. I'm constantly finding new records that I've never heard of that I love. It's just never ending. So yeah, there is no real downtime.
Well, you mentioned the idea of the Indie Music Archive as kind of a communal space. Have you gotten any discussion as far as funding that or where it would be held? Or
I just had a conversation with Jason and Corrado from Rome earlier tonight, and Jason is a Canadian librarian, and Corrado is a guy I know, a bit of a fan, and who, when I was in Rome with Anekdoten, he showed me around and hung out with him a bit, and he's always been interested in trying to help me get the Indie Music Archive off the ground as a project for funding, or get that building that I need for it. So I had an interesting conversation with him tonight, and he was just telling me that the first thing I have to do is verbalize exactly what it is, how I see it, and then that's the first stage. When it comes to inventory, and it's 50,000 records. It's just a huge job. But the vision of how I see it getting to the world is something I have to write down and try and think about.
I guess what I was just saying was that I remember just seeing a video clip that you put to kind of discussing it and all the records you were walking around and showing, and I was like blown away. I'm like, this looks like a record store you have in your house. It was so massive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it's all kinds of things, it's all kinds of things. It's swing and jazz and blues and fusion and classical and soul. And that's just part of it. It's mostly rock, singer-songwriter, rock bands, but it's reggae and, Italians, Germans, Canadians, French records, I mean, there's not a lot of hip-hop in there, but that's more because I don't know much about it. Because I didn't grow up with it and I don't know much about it. If there was somebody around who could educate me and come around here for 3 months and say, okay, this is great hip hop and this is why, I'd probably get into it. I just don't get much exposure to that kind of music. Yeah. But I'm always interested in hearing music, and I love new acts. I love old acts. I love old records. I love new records. I like CDs. I like vinyl. I like cassettes. I like it. I like 78s. I like it all,
Well, so you were mentioning, coming back to Texas at some point. Do you have any plans at all right now for North American dates, or just?
No, nothing. No, just vague ideas, really. I think the other thing I'll be doing is I'll be going back to Sweden I went to Sweden in February to work with Anekdoten on demos for a new album with them. And there's a gig in Norway in October, and maybe at that point we'd sort of get back into finishing demos and getting onto actually recording a new album with them, which would be great because I've been in the band for 4 years now, and I just played on the title track of their last record, and that's when they asked me to join. But this record I'll be involved in from the start, on all kinds of different levels, and on playing guitar on every track, and writing, and helping them with producing the vocals, because I'm English and they're Swedish, just helping them with that, and getting quite involved in that. So yeah, there's lots going on, but in the end, all I want to know is where am I going to get the 19 quid to buy the reissue of David Sylvian's Secrets of Beehive. That's all I care about at
the moment. Well, great. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. It was a pleasure, as always. Was there anything else you wanted to add about anything else coming up? Or I guess we covered quite a bit of it, but anything else you wanted to promote? Or
I just hope that I want to be able to do this British tour that I did. It's the first time I ever toured Britain by myself and with Olivia, but as me, and I just hope that I can continue to do. It's not like I've got anything more to promote. It's that I just like people to know that I'd like to do more of what I do. I mean, it seems like when I talk to people about it, they always say, "Well, my God, you're doing so many things." And I'm thinking to myself, oh, really? Well, that's going to be done soon. And then what about, I haven't got any more British dates planned. When's that going to happen? And can I do more British dates? Should I be booking the next British tour for next March tomorrow? I'm always thinking about how I can continue to do things that I want to do. And we say the word promote, and we do interviews, and that's promotion. But it's more about, I don't sort of see it like that. I just see it more as being involved.
Mm-hmm.
Being involved in the creative process, and it's great when you're in a position like I am, where I can go and play to 50, 60 people and sell out some London shows. Selling out London and Manchester, and go and play 50, 60 people in some small rooms in Edinburgh and Liverpool and Birmingham and Bristol, and people clapping and listening and liking it. And that's what I want to do, and come in the studio and come up with some great ideas and do a good recording of it and get it out. And it's great to have the support of School Kids Records in America, and just being involved with my wife makes everything really great, so that everything, creative and personal is all kind of intertwined. That's a great place to be, and with an audience that is willing to listen and appreciates it and wants to buy it, so I can do it again, make another record, and keep on doing it. Because I could sit in here happily for 5 years, presuming I had the financial stability, and I could just sit in here for 5 years and write songs and different kinds of things and sing and play the bass, and Olivia could play violin, and we could write together and invite people. We could just do, it's just this whole fantastic process of creativity, this whole idea that there's a blank canvas, and then you go blah, and then this magic thing happens, and suddenly there you've got something which is great and evocative and meaningful and melodic and experimental and interesting and catchy from nowhere. It's just an amazing thing, and I just always want to be involved in that.
Well, I hope that to see you sooner than later, and I will definitely won't miss you next time. I don't know how that happened last time, but I will keep an eye on that Bands in Town app.
Yeah, well, you gotta be on the mailing list, maybe.
Yeah,
Michael,
let's do that too.
Get on the mailing list. Talk to Olivia about how to not miss gigs, or fly to Dusseldorf on September the 7th.
I wish I could. Well, it's always a pleasure, Marty.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you.
All right. Well, have a great night, and I'll talk to you all soon.
All right. See ya. Bye.
Thanks to Marty for taking the time out for this interview. Be sure and get his blue vinyl reissue at your local rec store this weekend. And you can purchase The Afterlife via the Amazon link on our website for the blog post for this episode. Both albums are released via School Kids Records. We're going to close out with The Moon Drips off Nocturum's The Afterlife. And then we'll close with You Bring Your Love to Me off Hanging Out in Heaven. Till next time, take care and talk to you soon.
diamonds and snow and crystals that grow, a tune in the trees that hangs on the breeze. And you bring my love to me. You bring my love to me. If I had the choice of an angel's voice, if I could empower for one single hour, then you'd bring your love to me. You'd bring your love to me, and we'd kiss and entwine for all time. Garlands of flowers and sweet springtime showers, your hair in the clouds, your tresses unwound, and you bring your love to me. You bring your love to me. The patterns and shapes that fall into place, the light of the moon that shows me your face, and you bring my love to me. You bring my love to me, and we kiss and entwine for all time, for all time, for